Do you need 5 minutes? Anybody?
I'm fine.
You, everybody? Okay, we're now in study session, and so move right to that and keep on going.
Okay.
And the first, do you want to do the COVID items first?
Yeah, we'll cover those really quick while we've got everybody here. First thing I want to, you have a copy of our briefing from our first incident briefing, and this basically goes from 3/23 to today. What we've made a determination, we're going to go from week to week on each of our operational periods. And so if you kind of look through there, you kind of see a number of things that in this document. You see where we've listed, this is a direct, this map that you see here is a direct link to the map that we have out there on our COVID-19 website. And it talks about openings, closings, and if you go to that map, you can actually see what each of those correspond with. But some of them mean open, some of them mean closed, some of them have special restrictions. But without going into all the detail, that's what that map shows. Some of the situational summary and history of the safety briefing. And this basically is what this is a recognize potential incidents of health and safety hazards and develop necessary measures. Go down the list of these really quick, and you can read through these, but exposure to COVID-19, implement and maintain safety and personnel protective measures to protect city personnel, continue to assess need for supplies, and disinfect city assets, continue education of hazards associated with COVID-19, and continue to work as a unified team, which we have done. We had a number of meetings throughout the week this last week with all of our departments, and talked about how we as a unit are going to respond to this, how we're going to continue to do our best as a city organization to protect our citizens and protect our employees against any of the issues that arrive with COVID-19. If you go on to the next page, you can kind of see the current and planned objectives. And these are a lot of the things that that have come from you as directives from the last several weeks that you guys have taken action. Obviously, closing a number of the city offices, but also providing these services behind the scenes are things that we're looking to continue to do. Municipal court lobby was closed effective 3/24. Payments were handled through online and through the mail, and that's been implemented as discussed. Turkey Creek Golf Course, we made the decision on Friday to go ahead and close the clubhouse and close the usage of the carts. And I assume we'll talk a little bit after I go through this briefing about where we go from here. But I know a number of steps were taken to make sure that we could maintain that in the best sanitized method we can. Park department, we've deployed signs to all of our playgrounds, closed those off, and I think, have you taped off, or have you, Wayne? We are taking efforts to get some bigger signs and block those off to the best of our ability. Obviously, playgrounds are a big concern from us from a germ standpoint, and we prefer that people aren't on those at this point. And at some point, there'll be an opportunity to open those after this is behind us. We'll continue to do that. We've told people we'll keep the public restrooms closed till the 15th, and I think depending on where we're at from this standpoint, we may have to extend that as well. It just depends. We've moved picnic tables out of the way. We've taken some of our trash cans that are hard to actually throw trash away without being able to spread germs and whatnot. We've moved those out of the area. We've tried to do a lot of things in all of our public areas to minimize those things that people would easily touch, to remove those on a temporary basis. We do want to continue to encourage people to use trails and use the open spaces, but obviously those things that people touch are big concerns and we've tried to do our best to minimize the impact that those could have on spreading germs. Police Department has taken on temps at each shift change, taking temperatures for all of our employees at shift change, and they're working to balance the shifts if necessary. If we get to the point where we've got to do it on a minimized staffing standpoint, they've got plans in place to be able to do that. Police and fire will only engage in medicals if necessary. In the past, we've typically, there's been a lot of team efforts when we've had medical calls for police and fire to assist with those. We're only doing those when they're critical and when it's absolutely needed. Otherwise, EMS is taking the lead on some of those medical calls. Public Works has worked to disinfect tools and equipment daily, also using social distancing as much as possible. And obviously, we have to keep the wastewater treatment plant up to date and working. And so we've got crews that are continuing to make sure that our wastewater is being treated. Human Resources, we have been permitted to waive some of the CAPERS procedures that go along with that. And other HR changes, we've been working to implement all of the COVID legislation that's come down from the federal government. Our employees, either Friday or today, are getting the guidelines that come from the emergency leave that's been granted by the federal government, and we'll continue to educate them and let them know how that will all work. That will absolutely impact potentially some of our the number of people we have working in various departments when that happens. And so we'll, I didn't know that some guidance was just given from the Department of Labor that we got from the League of Municipalities on what emergency responders are defined as, and they are exempted from that, some of those leave requirements. And so we'll continue to make sure we're implementing that in accordance with the federal government. And obviously, public information is a big part of this whole thing. We're going to continue to work with the McPherson County Health Department, the state of Kansas, through KDHE, to provide relevant information to local media and citizens, both through the media and through the social media that we've continued to try to expand. So those are some of the things that we've done to this point. Current planned actions and strategies and tactics that we're using. We're continuously implementing and maintaining safety and personnel protective measures for city personnel. We're recognizing the need for supply and maintaining sufficient supplies on a continuous basis. We're working to disinfect McPherson city assets. That includes spraying down. We've got sprayers that we can use a 10% bleach solution that we're out deploying to those that we want to make sure are kept disinfected. That's being used in areas that we know that people are still going to continue to touch and be in contact with, so we're being able to minimize the risk that goes along with that. We're continuing education of city personnel of hazards concerning COVID-19. We spent last week talking with our departments and hopefully getting that spread down to all levels of city employee. And we're on a continuous basis, we're identifying high-risk areas susceptible to COVID-19 and minimizing impact by removal and disinfectant. On a continuous basis, we're trying to limit the spread of COVID-19 to McPherson City and County, and reducing the spread if and when identified. Obviously, it's been identified that there are several cases in McPherson, as the mayor mentioned, and obviously we can do the best that we can, both from a media standpoint and from a public infrastructure standpoint, but also educating, making sure we can educate and get with some of our private industries and businesses that have to stay open to try to make sure that they're following the best measures they can to protect the spread within the community. We're taking steps to ensure key personnel and first responders are available in the event of an outbreak. We've talked about what we'll do in the instance that some of our first responders do come down with it. We've tried to do some distancing. We've tried to split where certain crews are being housed and the interaction that they have between each other. And so we'll continue to work towards that, because obviously, regardless of the spread of COVID-19, we have to be able to continue to operate as a city. We're trying to preserve continuity of key public and private agencies in the McPherson area, and that's a continuous effort. And then we're educating and informing the public with regards to protecting themselves and preventing any spread. The biggest way we can do that is through our social media and through the information we're releasing here. Sydney came on board a couple weeks ago, and we've really put her to work, and we're going to continue to push out as much information as we can from our public information officer and from other key stakeholders. We'll continue to do that. Enforcing and supporting the emergency safer at home order, and I did have this on here, the piece that came from McPherson Health Department. I will say, with the governor coming out on the 28th, that does supersede any of the safer at home regulations that the county has, but as the mayor mentioned, they're very similar in a lot of ways, but we also need to make sure we're enforcing the governor's executive order that came out over the weekend.
We'll put the governor's order that I read through the beginning of the commission meeting on here, but we'll leave the safer at home, because if the governor's order is not renewed on April 19th, and this is running for 60 days, we'll still keep those limitations until the county changes if the state pulls their order down. If it's state's renewed for a longer period, then, and the county doesn't renew, then we obviously go with the state. But the county is still in force if the state order expires.
So moving on to the next page, wanted to show you kind of the organizational chart. The mayor had mentioned all of the assignments for people in various forms. This may be something that continues to evolve throughout this, but you can kind of see the organizational structure of the EOC, and you see myself as coordinator. I won't go through all these, but you have a liaison, you have a safety officer, you have public information, which is, as I mentioned, critical in this instance. You have an operations section, a logistics section, a planning, and a finance section. And we're all going to take our guidance from the policy group, which is you, the governing body, and our city attorney, to also help us give any guidance that we have and what you guys are passing down as far as your expectations. And having that structure is critical. The next page, as we kind of tried to identify all the things that we would potentially use as supplies related to this potential to try to prevent the spread and protect our employees from COVID-19. You see a list of all of our supplies. We think this is a fairly updated list of supplies. We've talked about how we can share them. Obviously we need to be able to provide our public safety people and those that are going to respond to these need to be able to maintain their resources. We're continuing looking at the resources that we have available and making requests when it's appropriate to do so. There is an official form that we have to provide through McPherson County Emergency Management that gets sent up to the state level when we do need resources. We did receive one request from an outside agency that you actually have a copy of there, but and we received it from Blue Stem Pace for some additional medical equipment that they felt they needed to have, and we've forwarded that on to the county. But you do have that. We'll continue to monitor all these supplies, and when we need to make requests, we'll do so. Obviously we talk about safety equipment when you're applying disinfectant and when you're going in to deal with any patients. Those are all things that we're going to have to continue to use some of those supplies. That may be a changing list as we see new things that new needs that might be arising. You got several pages of that. And as we kind of look at this, we'll probably have an inventory page for each department as that comes. Incident objectives, I've kind of gone over a lot of these things. There'll be repeats of what you've seen. but you kind of see through here. We'll talk about a little bit about safety plan. We'll talk about some of the forms that we're completing. As Jeff Houston reminded me, sent an email out before this particular meeting, is that the president has accepted the disaster declaration for the state of Kansas, and as a result of that, one of the reasons we're doing all this paperwork and we're following this structure that we have is critical in the incidence of us being able to recover any funds that we might have opportunity to do so at some point in the future. So this whole structure is defined by FEMA, and that's the reason we're going through this. Obviously, this is the general situational awareness. We do have 3 cases now, and this indicates one, but obviously this is changing on a rapid basis. The details that go along with this. I want to thank Dennis Dennis Darby at the fire department, who's in the planning section, that helped us kind of prepare some of this. You've got some of the contacts for our incident team that we've got to have listed. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the safety measures. Some of the things that we've tried to get the word out, and I want to thank our biological response team here at the city, trying to get the word out about utilizing fuel pumps, both internally, making sure that our employees are safe when they're out doing their work at the McPherson County Public Works Yard. We've done a number of things to try to make sure that we don't spread that at our own local facilities. We've tried to do some things at those pumps to improve that. We placed position. We've done some things to, when we do accept currency, that we're making sure we've got gloves and things of that nature. We've closed everything. We've tried to encourage online payments on a number of things. We're trying to use the social distancing here. All cities we're working to disinfect daily, taking extra precautions to make sure that things are cleaned up, both in our personal workspaces and whatnot. And when we've got employees out in the field, we're making sure we're disinfecting equipment. Proper personal hygiene, we're trying to push that through as quick as we can. Obviously, you mentioned sanitizer. I want to thank the Dodge City Brewery for the opportunity to help us get some additional sanitizer. Obviously, that's a hard thing to come about right now, and for us to be able to have that and have available for all of our employees is going to be critical. Obviously, we talked a little bit about making sure when we are applying disinfectant that it's done safely, when we have all the necessary PPE to do that. And so that kind of talks about our briefing period from this point, and then I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming operational period, which will be basically go till Monday of next week. And I have a list of, looks like this, it's a bulleted list of upcoming needs and challenges for the operational period. Obviously, we'll continue to build upon what you see in this document, this briefing period. A lot of the things you'll see will be the same as those. Obviously, encouraging and enforcing the emergency safer at home order, and then also now the state order that's come through, which does supersede the local ordinance. We need to continue enforcement and encouragement of that. And some of that's going to come through some of the actions that law enforcement and what we're putting out on a public basis to try to encourage everybody to follow that. Will continue to be a challenge as this evolves. We'll continue to work internally to ensure publicly accessible public sector assets are disinfectant, as we've done. We'll work regularly with the private sector partners to ensure that disinfectant measures are being taken to ensure safety at their locations. I think, and the next item is one that I think probably will require some discussion on what level of continued use we'll continue to allow at Turkey Creek Golf Course. I know we've got a couple folks from the golf course here. We spoke extensively last week about what we might potentially do. That's kind of what led to us making the decision to close the clubhouse and limit use of the public carts. I know it wasn't an easy discussion, but we talked a lot about where we go from here. And obviously, we want to be able to encourage people to be able to have physical activity because you're talking about a significant stretch of time, but at the same time, if we can't do that in a safe way, that's something that needs to be discussed. I don't know if you want to pause and have that discussion?
Do you want to go through the last few items
Yeah.
and then we'll come,
Okay.
that will be the first thing we come back to.
Okay, great. We also talk about continuity of city operations deemed essential for foreseeable future and working with any staff limitations that arise from the virus exposure and mandatory quarantines. We may ask people to function in some roles that they might not normally do if and when we're impacted by the actual virus hitting our employees. I think there's already people that have agreed to help out in areas that they might not traditionally do, and we'll continue to address those. Obviously, some are limited by certifications and whatnot, but we'll continue to work towards that. Keeping the McPherson community calm and limiting panic, that might come from any of the executive orders and also the fact that we've identified some positive cases in the community. I think your message earlier is important to that, to say, hey, look, as long as we're using these measures, I think we can prevent the spread. And these orders are important that we follow them to the best that we can, and we're just following all the measures we can. We're going to continue to try to put that message out and keep people calm to the best of our ability. And then handling requests from outside agencies for supplies, we'll continue to work with them. The structure's set up to be able to identify where other needs are within the community, and also the needs that we'll have as an organization. I know that the state is working really hard to get those limited demand or high demand, limited availability supplies out to those where they're most critical. In a lot of cases, those are the medical providers that are out there doing screenings and having to deal with patients. And so we obviously know where we may have some limitations in getting some of those supplies, but we'll continue to work to obtain some of those supplies locally within industry. Industry's got access to a lot of those supplies, and we'll when it's available and when it's necessary, we'll try to find whatever resources we can. And then maintaining and acquiring necessary also supplies for us, as I mentioned. That kind of goes into that next item. And then ensuring all citizens are able to, in a safe manner, to secure all the resources needed to live from their homes for an extended period of time. That means working. We've already had a lot of people in the community that have agreed to help neighbors out that might be under quarantine or are concerns about getting out there, getting them groceries, doing some of those things. I think there's been a great effort locally to do that and address those, and we'll continue to encourage our citizens to help each other out when they can do it safely without the potential to spread the virus. So those are kind of some of the things we addressed for the upcoming operational period. A lot of those are going to sound similar to what we've already talked about, but we'd welcome any opportunity from the governing body to give us any further directive that they want to from a policy standpoint. And I think if anybody else would like to make any comments from this, I'd welcome that as well for anybody else in the room.
Seeing none, I would like to go back to the Turkey Creek Golf Course, allow Commissioner Mel and golf course staff to make any comments they want to make.
I think I'd like to say that what precipitated a lot of the decision that was made last week was McPherson is one of the few golf courses, Turkey Creek's one of the few golf courses that were remaining open. A lot of the others had closed. And as you know, Wichita and a lot of other areas were on a safe-at-home order to stay at home. And all of a sudden, during the week, we got a call from about 20 or 30 Wichita golfers that wanted to come to McPherson and play golf because they heard we were open. So they actually defied their order to stay home. They decided to come up anyway. And being a public golf course, we had no choice but to let them play. Now, what we did do in concern for the health of our employees and the people that work out there was, we closed the clubhouse, and we pulled all the carts back inside so nobody could use those. And they could play, they just had to walk well, basically just had to walk it. So that's what precipitated that decision last week. We needed some discussion on where we want to go from here, whether we want to follow suit from some of the other golf courses around and just simply close the course and be done with it, or do you want to try to come up with some kind of a plan to keep it open on a temporary basis?
So, we have a couple options. And the courses that have closed down completely are the ones in Wichita, Salina Municipal, and Lawrence. Other golf courses in the area have just closed their clubhouse down, and possibly their carts. Like Heston, Carrier Park is still running, and they're still running their carts with one person limit in the carts. I found out this morning Cherry Oaks is closed down the clubhouse and all the carts. So there's a variety of different things, and I sent an article to Gary, and that's the problem, is there's no concert effort into how to take care of the golf courses. Everybody's coming up with their own ideas and what to do, so we can look at what other people are doing, but it's gonna come down to what we wanna do. So, when we did close down the clubhouse, we had one person in the clubhouse, and they were taking payment by phone, or they were using the proper PPE and meeting somebody at the door, taking their money there, and going in. Nobody would enter the clubhouse. They would come out and meet them and take their money there with the gloves on. And that worked really well. It really shut down the out-of-town play. For the most part, everybody was residents. They did walk. The other issue that we have is we have a lot of personal golf carts. So people are still using their personal golf carts, which for the most part should be fine. They're the only ones that are using them, but we might want to look at making sure that there's only one person in those golf carts if we move forward with letting those out. So, as Treg and I discussed here, so we can go about this the same way we have been going right now. It went really well this weekend. Everybody did a great job of keeping their space, not congregating up at the clubhouse. We can go to walkers only, then there's no carts whatsoever, there's no personal golf carts or anything out there, or we can shut down completely. So those are the discussions that we're gonna need to have, and with each one of those comes other items. If we do stay open and we want to let people continue to come out and work through the clubhouse with one person up there, people want to know if they're going to be able to buy concessions. Are they going to be able to get range balls? Are they going to be able to do those things? So those are things that we could have to look at, whether we want to continue to try and do those or not do those. And then if we do close down, are we going to have some help enforcing that? Because there are going to be people that are going to want to come out there, and what forms of enforcement do we have when we catch people out on the golf course coming out and just walking on and playing? So those are some of the questions that we have. Trey, did you want to add anything?
Just what he said about over the weekend. It was a beautiful day Sunday. We had quite a few players out there, but we did stagger the tee times, and there wasn't ever big groups, around the clubhouse or in the putting green. Everyone was really spread out. So that did work pretty well. But he pretty much covered everything with what we kind of talked about with our options that we kind of see moving forward. So
Now, you guys can take online payment. Did you guys take online?
well, we do it. We can.
Facilitated it?
It won't take much if we decide to do online payment. We have it set up that we can do it. We did it over the phone, or we cracked the door and took payment with the proper PPE. I have all the information to be able to do the online payment stuff. We would just have to.
The only thing is they said that there could be a pretty big lag in getting it set up, just because there's so many people doing that right now. So.
But you can do it, if you had somebody at the clubhouse, you could be taking
We
can do it
call
over the
ins,
phone.
and you can,
Yes, we can do it over the
you can
phone.
read people's cards,
Yep.
without actually being able to have to
Yeah.
touch money and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah. Yep.
How does this fall within Governor Kelly's order for essential and non-essential?
I don't know, that was a question that
I was
brought up
talking,
too.
I was talking to Rich Olson, and he lives here and is, you know, he has a place in Missouri, and he hadn't been there, but he was saying that they deem their golf courses as essential for mental health. But, I mean, that's, for getting out and walking like in a park, you know,
Yeah, I understand.
for
Yeah.
physical and mental, as long as you're practicing the social distancing the correct way, it's activity and, but, you know, other people have shut it down.
Right.
So, I mean, like, the articles say there's all different actions people are taking.
And there's not one way to do it, and that's
No.
why it's a little bit more difficult. It really falls on us to decide on what we want to do.
Yeah.
And that would be the discussion you guys would need to take.
Well, I'll throw my opinion out there and then you guys can talk about it. But I, frankly, in light of the safe at home order and that not being what I consider an essential function, in light of the fact that if we remain open, we're still gonna have people bringing things in here that defy the order. People just defy the order. That's all there is to it. It's my opinion that we need to bite the bullet, probably shut it down for a period until May the 1st, for a period of time, and see if we can get this thing whipped and under control, because I am more concerned, honestly, more than I've ever been about the spread of this COVID-19. I think it could really hit us hard, and we sat here and relaxed because this is McPherson and we've always been safe here. I think it can get us. So I'm concerned about that very much. I'm concerned about the employees. I just think we need to shut it down for a period of time, and that would eliminate all the other issues, basically.
I appreciate your concern. I don't see where, after everything we've gone over this morning, you could say we're relaxed, but it's your opinion. Commissioner Weems.
I just think we ought to shut it down. That's my personal opinion. I think I've heard 2 or 3 comments over the weekend. I had a couple of phone calls. People said, you know, yeah, it'd sure be nice to leave it open, but are you going to put revenue over safety? And I said, you know what, when you talk about that, why, it's pretty hard to say that we can't shut it down. I just, I think we ought to bite the bullet and see what happens. Do it on a week-to-week, 2 weeks, whatever. But I don't think we have a choice.
I would say that we could follow Governor Kelly's order to the 19th and then see what she says from that point on. Would that, if that's the way we want to go, would that be a good date?
I would have no problem following the governor's order, that we would discuss it on our meeting on the 20th. To remind everybody that President Trump extended his
Yeah.
piece
Just did
to
today.
April 30th. So I'm not going to be surprised if the governor ultimately doesn't extend her order as well. But I think if we totally close down for golf, the course is closed, and then we'll decide on the 20th where the orders are going. For other things above us, we'll be in good shape. I will remind everybody, when we close the course down, does not mean we're not going to have people working there, because if we don't keep the course maintained, we are going to have a big problem coming back in. So everybody that works there, in the maintenance side of it, has to be there. We should still have one person in the clubhouse to answer all the calls and to take care of whatever orders and anything that we have to do coming up in June, July, and August, to coordinate all that, because guys who run the equipment aren't going to answer those calls, type thing. But even though we approved temporary or seasonal workers to be hired today, we're not going to execute that until after we know we're open, unless you need them for some maintenance.
So basically, we'd be talking about minimal staffing. to the
Right.
best
Right,
of our
yeah.
ability.
We'd be doing the same thing that industry and a lot of other places are doing. And are you okay with the 19th?
Yeah,
And
fine.
follow the governor?
Sure.
Okay. Is there any other area in this particular issue that we need to go over? Because we'll have to take it up when we reconvene.
I had, one thing I forgot to point out when I was doing my report is you have a sheet that looks like this. Where you are tracking expenses, I don't think this sheet includes all of our labor that we've spent, but attending different webinars, different things that, to give us guidance, and also some of the supplies that we've had to buy are listed on this sheet here. I did want to hit those. I will say that the labor is not 100% updated. We probably hope to have that updated as of the end of today, as far as labor that's been spent. But obviously, we talk about supplies. There have been some need for some supplies and whatnot, but I don't think there's necessarily any action to take. None of those were over over 1,000 in cost, but there have been some supplies we've had to order and get taken care of.
Okay, all right.
One other thing on the enforcing of this, when people are trying to just walk on, or how do you want us to go about, in the evening time, if we're gone?
It's
Or do
trespassing.
you want somebody to continue to stay out there to make sure that people are not just coming on from the development or anything like that?
Is this a problem anytime?
It can be.
It can be, but is it a problem? I mean, is that something that happens all the time?
I wouldn't say it happens
Well,
all
I
the
mean,
time, but
late evening, somebody that lives in Turkey Creek that's a member will just drive on and then come check in like a different hole or whatever, but, I mean, I'm just thinking of, a lot of those people live in Turkey Creek development will walk their animals late at night or early in the morning,
yeah, that's another
when
thing.
we're not there.
I'm not worried about somebody walking their animal, but I do think we have clubhouse personnel that you should bring a shift on from some point in the afternoon, a person till dark to be there, to be able to tell people that they can't be there, and that you have somebody that was gonna be there anyhow, so they should be there just to tell people they can't play.
And putting up maybe some signs that say,
And I think once the word
play on
gets
the courses.
out,
Yeah.
once the
Consider
word gets out,
trespassing.
and we know there's the 2 or 3 people we'll make sure that we talk to,
Okay,
that we
You know,
but
Yeah.
if there's a housewife that wants to walk her dog at 7:30, I don't see a problem with that. Okay, we'll come back to it when we come back in session to do that type of thing, okay? As we can't make a decision in study session.
Any other guidance that from the governing body that they want to give to staff as we continue to go through here? Anything that maybe we didn't address in our plan that the commission wants to talk about?
I think that there are gonna be some businesses that will debate whether they're essential or non-essential. I think that you ought to get those, and then if we need to have a meeting midweek or something of the policy group, we'll announce it, and we can do it by telephone and make a decision on whether they're essential or non-essential. You had one last week?
As far as calls,
Yeah,
we probably had 3 or 4. I did talk to Ann Engel at Main Street, and, a lot of our discussions were based upon the county's order, so obviously this will change. I mean, the interpretations may change a little bit, but yeah, we had maybe 2 or 3 calls
yeah,
about it.
well, are there any specifics that we can think about?
One was a furniture store here in town, and asking whether they were essential. There might have been a little. I know that the 2 orders are different and how they're written, but I think there's a lot of similarities. But we were able to look through the county's order and potentially make some determinations. I don't know if the same regulations are going to apply in what the governor's order are. So I think every industry and every business has to look at that list and make that determination based upon there. We'll do our best to give guidance, but some of that's left fairly vague to make that determination. But if you want to have a list for us to review, we absolutely can continue to keep that list.
Yeah, I think we ought to get a list. Anybody that has something should contact the city administrator. City administrator will ask the policy group for an opinion,
I agree.
okay?
The furniture store did close.
They did,
My husband works there, yes.
Yeah.
They were not open on Saturday.
Yeah.
yeah.
I will think, and we have more than one place that sells furniture, but, you know, if you look at yourself and it doesn't have to be done over the next couple of weeks, you don't need to be open. And that would be the litmus test that I would look at each one of these things with. So there will be some things that will temporarily close. Anybody that we make a ruling in the governing body will take a look at this to April 19th and see where we're at and where we go from there. If we have to continue to the 30th, we'll do the 30th. But we'll not do a long period of time on these, and hopefully things will turn around and get better. But we're not at the peak, so we have to be as careful as we can.
Well, and I know there's been a lot of questions about whether people have to have paperwork and everything that they'll carry with them. And I think that's a false rumor that's being spread that will have to happen. I think, you know, as long as you can justify that you're going to an essential business, you don't necessarily have to have a letter in hand, whatnot. But you do, you know, if it's clear and obvious, law enforcement's going to address it, that somebody's, there's a gathering of more than certain people out in public, those things that we can identify, we'll try to address from that standpoint. But we're not out to pull people over we see driving or walking, as long as they're following the guidelines with as the governor mentioned in her order.
Yeah, and I think the governor's order does talk about a letter or ID or something. So, you know, if you have a company ID or if you don't have IDs, you have something that identifies you as an employee, and we know that business is open, that's all you need. But we are not in actively pulling people over to check where they're going. If we did that, we would not do our functions that are required. So we'll just keep on short period to short period.
Well, it was interesting. It was appliance shop, I believe it was in Wichita, that said, we will deliver your new appliances or pick up and repair, and you bring them to the front door. So, in other words, we're not coming into the house. We're
Right. Yeah, so
that
there'll be some of that people will decide they can wait a month.
And I think, you know, you're going to see some unique things that businesses are going to do to be able to provide, follow the law, to be able to do the necessary things they need to do from a delivery standpoint. Or I think you're going to see some unique things out there. I think that's all right. Businesses still have to be sustainable in the long run. And so if there's creative ways you can do that without violating this order, I think, you know, those are important things to look at.
Okay? I'm going to move on to food truck policy. There's a food truck coming on Thursday is the first one I know about. There may be somebody else coming before Thursday. I don't see how you can deny a food truck because it falls within the food delivery. What I do think is that there should be some guidelines as to how they're going to do this. And just like our people on Main Street that are having food and they can call in and deliver or pick up, I mean, I think that they should take phone orders and call the people when it's ready, and you can wait in the area in your car, you come and take it. But if they don't want to do that and they just want to do the way they've always done it and you wait at the window, it can't happen because that is not social distancing. So however they practice hygiene and social distancing, that has to be done even with a food truck.
I agree.
Well, we were going to try to come up with contact information for that particular food truck that was questioned.
Yeah.
And try to reach out to them and let them know they need to have, show us their plan on how they're going to do
Right.
this.
You know, and they each may do a little bit different, but as long as we feel that they're meeting hygiene and social distancing standards, I think they're an essential function under the governor's definitions.
So who's gonna see that this happens?
Yeah,
Is that PD? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Michael.
That's all I wanted to know.
chief will take care of it.
All right, good.
Okay, public lands and facilities, you had a
Just
job,
have a request to hire a full-time individual to replace an individual that resigned.
do we need them now?
We can use it.
That's Commissioner's recommendation,
Yeah, I'd recommend.
Go,
okay? And then
Public Works.
wastewater treatment plant,
A dissolved oxygen in-basin analyzer for one of the SVRs went out, needs to be replaced. We have 4 of these sensors, 1 in each SVR unit. Average lifespan 2 to 4 years. We keep 1 in inventory for replacement purchases. We received a quote from Hog Corporation for $4,802 with just under $100 shipping. I just rounded it up to 5,000.
Okay, bring it.
right? Okay, does anybody else have anything for our study session?
Can I make a comment just for the public? On Friday, I went to the Boot Hill Distillery is actually the name of the business to pick up hand sanitizer for our police department and fire department. And I've had emails asking me since, do you know where we can get hand sanitizers from our local motels? And so I'm told them about that, so I just wanted to make sure the public knew that it is available. There's a form online that you have to request it, and then they call you, and it has to be picked up. It cannot be mailed due to the alcohol content, but they are donating that to the city. So,
And-
the Boot Hill Distillery.
Okay,
Scott, did you have anything from the LAPC standpoint?
Not from the LAPC, it's also been requested possibly from an industry liaison position for the city EOC.
yeah, you want to come up to the microphone? I was going to call on you, but he preempted me.
I have nothing to report at this time from the LAPC. I'm still trying to work with them and on direction. Had been approached in reference to possibly a liaison position for the industry. Wanted to find out what that might, expectations of the city regarding that, how that would look. We've had some internal discussion with CHS as to how that would possibly look and supporting that position for the city. So just open up that discussion for that if possible.
Sure, we would love to have an industry liaison person that we can talk to, and whether it's LAPC or just an industrial group. We do put out on our hub site all the different things. I did not identify any specific industry, what they're doing, just all the different things that are being done. But anything we could put out on that top of our hub site, there's industry, that we could put that all in one sentence instead of a list, and then anything else that needs to be put out for industry through liaison or some way, we'd want to be put that out so they could not only see all the other things in the community, but they have a button for that information. We'd love to have that connection.
Okay.
Is that something that you'd be willing to serve, or you'd be allowed to serve in that capacity if we were to put something out on social media to say,
Yes, I have communicated with CHS in reference to supporting that role. We would not be supporting that as an LEP position, so it would be as an entity, private entity through the industry. I've also reached out to a couple of other industries to possibly form a 3 or 4 person team or group in order to help facilitate that. And then as we continue to discuss, maybe kind of get an idea of what that will look like as far as how deep into the industry or to small business that we want to look at, and as far as representing. So
Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, if you guys come up with ideas, we'd be more than happy to sit down and talk with you about it, be it virtually or in person.
yeah, okay,
and we'll work with, the MIDC, and we'll work with our social media, anything you'd like to get out to get the word that you will be serving in that capacity.
Okay, okay. I will mention that probably, I know I speak for CHS, that within that liaison group, we'll probably funnel most of our information through our individual PIOs and have them, for anything that goes out
Yeah.
socially, it'll work through our representative
Yeah.
PIOs for that.
Yeah,
So.
Sounds good.
I don't think we need to publicize it. They'll
Right.
publicize themselves.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Yep.
All right, we'll work with you. Okay, anything else? Okay, I would like